Friends, good morning. Good to be with you this morning on this feast of St. Francis of Assisi. So I want to just kind of do a little real quick just want a little parish survey. I'm curious, when I say St. Francis, what's like one of the very first images that comes to mind? For me, brown robes, right? So the very first image that comes to mind for me, maybe it's not for you, but it is the bird feeder in my grandparents' backyard. Like, there he is with the sparrow and holding a bowl of water, right? That was my first exposure to St. Francis, my dad's parents in their backyard. And if I was a bird, I would want nothing to do with that bowl of water. It was always green and covered in slime. So, I don't know. But anyway, Francis of Assisi, I would imagine maybe some of us had some type of image like that. But St. Francis of Assisi, he's known as the seraphic doctor. The seraphic doctor, the seraphic father. Seraphic from the Hebrew seraphim, where we get the word seraph, so seraphim and cherubim, those angels. The seraphim, the seraphim, were the ones who were the closest to the face of God. They're the burning ones. That's what seraphim means. Think of the Old Testament when the seraph serpents come out and bite and sting the people. It's the burning sensation, right? So these seraphim, the burning ones, are the ones who are closest to the face of God, consumed with divine fire, and that's Francis. Francis, he was not some medieval 13th century hippie walking around just saying, listen, is there a guitar somewhere around here? That's not Francis. Francis was an absolute, radiantly on fire saint. He was burning with the love of Jesus Christ, and he was so instrumental in the reconstruction, the revitalization, the healing of the church, because he was a man who was consumed with love, utterly in love with Jesus. The story goes that each year during Lent, Francis would go up into the mountains. He would fast from the Eucharist, from Mass, for Lent. That was his Lenten fast, this man who was so in love with Jesus. He would seclude himself from the community up on Mount Alverna, up in the Umbrian hills there in Assisi, to pray and to fast, but mostly to spend those days contemplating the crucified, right? Christ crucified. I come to know nothing but Christ and him crucified. He would prepare himself for Holy Week by contemplating Christ. Again, this man who was burning with love of Jesus, who was so configured to Jesus that he received on his body the brand marks, the stigmata. He would deliberately choose to not receive the Lord sacramentally during Lent in order to enter more deeply into this ache, this longing, this desire of his to be united with love himself, which was, as Francis discovered, it was an echo of heaven's desire for him. So this fast, it was designed to, on his part, to increase his ache for heaven, but it got him in touch with the reality of heaven aching and hungering for him. Pretty beautiful. So the story goes, though, that as he would fast and pray and meditate on Mount Alverna, he would contemplate the image of the crucified, right? Jesus mocked and scorned and tortured and rejected and spit upon. And it was said that you could hear Francis's voice echoing on the mountains, crying out, "Love is not loved. Love is not loved. Love is not loved." Right? The cross, which is not an act of love, but it is love itself. It is love himself, love fully unfurled, revealed. It's the heart of God pinned up high for the world to see. Like, that is love. And Francis was contemplating the rejection of that, the rejection of love. Paul says God demonstrates his love toward us in that while we were still yet sinners, he died for us, that he came for those who are still in active rebellion against him. While we were crucifying him, Christ died for the godless. Right? Oceans of ink have been spilt trying to exhaust the meaning of those words, and theologians, mystics, saints, no one has been able to come close to plumbing the depths of it. Love is not loved. How can it be that the God of the universe, who is infinitely perfect and blessed in himself, lacking in nothing, utterly happy, majestic in glory, he looks at you and me, he looks at our whole race, this race that clamored for his crucifixion, who spat upon his face, who sinned and transgressed against his infinite justice, how is it that he thinks that we're worth dying for? Like, rather than just like steeling himself in like his divine prerogative, rendering himself impervious to us, he makes himself totally vulnerable. Right? God enters his story, he enters creation, he robes himself in flesh and frailty in order to fight for us and win us back and pour himself out. There's a beautiful fresco in the Basilica at St. Francis, a fresco by Giotto, the medieval painter. And it's the image of Christ on the cross, and there's all of these angels depicted in heaven, and they have this look of horror upon their faces as they're seeing what's happening to Jesus, as they're looking upon the crucified. Right? And it makes you think of in the garden where Simon strikes the ear of the high priest and Jesus says, "Put away your sword." Do you not think that with a single command I could order a legion of angels to my defense? He doesn't do that. Right? What Francis was contemplating, what set his heart so on fire, was an unfathomable love. Why would you love us? I don't know, but he does. Like the absurd love that God has, it's manifested not in the heights of like bliss and ecstasy. It's manifested for us in the throes of agony and mockery, right? The icon, the image of Christ as the divine bridegroom. The image of Christ as bridegroom, the image of Christ as the lover, as the warrior, as the general, the image of Christ as divine bridegroom. It is him in the midst of his passion when love is not loved, when love was not loved, when love himself was unloved. Like, this is what Francis was captivated by. This is what marked his whole life. Just an invitation for us today, through the intercession of St. Francis, this burning one, this one who is utterly on fire for Christ. Let us gaze again upon the crucified, to let our hearts be overwhelmed by what's before us, what's being unfurled in front of us. Amen.